While cleaning up after Easter, my husband's niece shared a shocking secret. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. Tessa's voice shook over the scrape of folding tables and the citrus bite of cleaner. "Aunt Mara," she whispered, eyes on the pastel baskets stacked along the wall. "They're using the Easter money. I'm a community nurse. I keep track of tiny numbers that matter, doses, dates, heartbeats, and I know the way a simple sentence can change a life." All afternoon, I'd been collecting ribbons and hymn sheets in the church fellowship hall, smiling at parishioners who hugged me with powdery hands. My husband Daniel hauled trash to the alley, his mother directing volunteers like a general. I had nothing to prove today, only a hallway to mop and a pan of scalloped potatoes to return to its owner. But the way Tessa's fingers trembled around a stack of donation envelopes told me this was not gossip. "Who?" I asked softly. She glanced toward the kitchen pass-through, where my mother-in-law, Elaine, laughed too loudly. "If I tell you, you can't tell Daniel yet. Promise." I have seen fear in families, a quiet bruise no one points to, but I had never seen it standing in my own. "Promise," I said, and the word tasted like a key turning. On the bulletin board, the tally sheet for offerings was pinned under a magnet shaped like a dove. April 1st, total $2,460. Envelopes E10 through E28. I'd watched Deacon Miller drop the sealed bags into the office safe an hour ago. Yet in Tessa's stack, I could see envelope E14 slit open and resealed with matte tape. "There's more," she said. "Not just today. It's been for months." I looked down at my hands, red from bleach, thinking of my job, my license, my marriage, and the kind of mess that stains reputations for years. The church hosted the Spring Craft Fair next Saturday, a public fundraiser. If what she believed was true, the exposure wouldn't simply be messy, it would be biblical. I smelled floor wax, lilies, and something sour behind the laughter. If I mishandled this, I could lose the trust one used to steady patients, and worse, lose the man who thinks family harmony is medicine. "Tell me everything," I said, and Tessa's eyes filled in relief. Then the kitchen door swung open and Elaine called my name, voice bright as a spotlight. Elaine likes to say our family is Midwestern polite, which mostly means we press old hurts into Jell-O molds and call them salads. I married Daniel because he listens more than he talks, and because his laugh warms a room, but he was raised in the gravitational pull of his mother's approval. On holidays, the women cook while the men move furniture, and the children orbit with sugar-stained lips. I keep the first aid kit stocked and the coffee urn full, and I pretend not to hear the snips that land like paper cuts. Some of us have real careers, Elaine remarked this morning when I slipped on my scrubs after sunrise service. She meant it as a joke, but her smile never reached her eyes. Daniel squeezed my hand. Mouths don't, and I didn't, because I have learned that correcting Elaine in public unspools into 3 phone calls and 1 visit about tone. Tessa's mother, Julia, the quietest of the siblings, arrived late with a tray of deviled eggs and a new bruise peeking from her sweater cuff. She said she caught it on the stairs, and Elaine said stair rails are tricky. We lined up for photos. Lilies in the background, plastic eggs in the foreground, the promise that nothing smells like bleach in the frame. Aunt Ruth, not really my aunt but everyone's, stood beside me and whispered, "Keep your head when the confetti falls." Ruth remembers the family from before Elaine ran every committee. She keeps receipts on a legal pad and stories in her head. I thought of my mother, who died when I was 21 and taught me that love without honesty isn't love, it's a sedative. So when Tessa tugged my sleeve today, I felt my mother's hand at my back as if from years away. Across the hall, Deacon Miller chatted with Daniel about the baseball opener, oblivious to the way Tessa's mouth had collapsed inward. Somewhere between the kitchen and the office, a joke about my little nurse schedule landed like a dart. I smiled, and the smile felt like a bandage covering a wound that would not close. In this family, you swallow so much sweetness the bitterness surprises you. I had swallowed enough sweetness for the year before Tessa said anything at all. Elaine handed me the dish and murmured, "Don't break the good one." After Elaine's spotlight call, I carried the potatoes to the warming cart and passed the office door. The safe sat squat and gray behind the glass pane, its combination dial reflecting the fluorescent lights. A blue key fob hung from the corkboard beside it, labeled storage in block letters. It shouldn't have been there. Those keys live in the treasurer's pocket, and the treasurer, Mr. Hanley, was home with pneumonia. On the folding table by the copier, 2 tally sheets lay side by side. One listed today's envelopes E10 to E28 totaling $2,460. The other, a carbon copy, listed E10 to E27 totaling $1,760. I blinked. The second sheet looked like it had been run again through the roller, lines doubled faintly, numbers a hair misaligned. Someone in a hurry, I thought. Someone confident no one reads the small type on a Sunday. I snapped a photo with my phone because nursing taught me that if you don't write it down, it didn't happen. Tessa brushed past with a stack of hymnals and, without stopping, murmured, "Check envelope E14." I pulled the stack from the wire basket. E14's flap was taped with matte tape, unlike the glossy strips on either side. The design on the front, a rainbow cross, had a thumbprint pressed into the ink. I said to the hallway, to no one, "Huh. The way you do when you find a bead where a pearl should be." Across the hall, Daniel laughed at a joke from Deacon Miller. The sound carried like music from someone else's party. Elaine floated through with her clipboard, checking boxes, smiling, turning her face to the light, never to the ledger. Families were experts at smiling while the numbers didn't add up. I slid the blue key into my pocket and told myself I would put it back after confirming a mismatch I desperately hoped was my mistake. The blue fob was rough against my fingers, the plastic nicked as if many hands had worried it. I had signed the volunteer policy last year. Access to storage meant access to overflow donations and archived records. Keys aren't just metal here, they are permission slips. Then my phone vibrated with a text from Tessa. "Talk now." Alone. I found Tessa in the broom closet off the hall, where mops leaned like tired soldiers and the air smelled like lemon and dust. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "They'll notice I'm gone," she said, pressing her palms to her jeans. 2 minutes, I said. "Tell me what you know." Before she could speak, Elaine swept past the closet door, her voice airy. "Mara, sweetheart, the bank deposit bags got mixed up with the raffle tickets," she trilled. "Would you mind helping sort? You're so organized." I stepped out. Tessa shrank back into the mop handles. On the kitchen counter, 2 blue canvas deposit bags lay beside a plastic tub of plastic eggs. Elaine plucked one up by the zipper like a stray sock. "This one's light," she said. "Must be the checks." I opened the log book. 2 bags were signed out by Mr. Hanley's substitute, initialed EM. Elaine's maiden initials. "Mrs. Markham," I said as politely as I could manage. "Shouldn't the deacons handle the deposits?" Elaine laughed, not pleasantly. "You know how people forget things," she said. "I'm helping." In the hall, Daniel knocked a stack of chairs. They clanged like bells. He moved toward us, reading my posture as if he could lean his calm against it. "Everything okay?" he asked. Elaine beamed. "Always." I felt the old pressure build between my collarbones, the one that comes when the right question will cost an apology later. So I said nothing and counted envelopes instead. E10, E11, E12, E14 was missing. "We'll find it," Elaine said brightly, already closing one bag, already angling her body so my hands could not reach. I thought of my nurse's training. If a story doesn't line up, check the label on the vial, check who signed, check who watched. I checked who watched me now. Aunt Ruth stood in the doorway, wiping her glasses, seeing everything without moving. "Mara," she said gently, "do you have a minute to help me in the pantry?" Her tone sounded like a life raft. I followed Ruth as Elaine zipped the bag closed like a tomb. Inside the pantry, which smelled like nutmeg and old cardboard, Ruth closed the door and clicked on the undershelf light. "She's testing you," Ruth murmured. "Elaine, she pushes to see where the edges are." "Tessa texted me," I said. "Something's wrong with the money." Ruth's mouth tightened. "I suspected. Watch everything. Right times." She slipped a pen into my hand, as if arming me. When I stepped back into the hall, Tessa was waiting with the broom handle braced like a spear. She pulled me into the closet and shut us in. "It started with reimbursements," she whispered. "Small ones. Gas for deliveries. Printer ink. Then it was temporary loan from the Easter Fund because the account for the roof repair hasn't cleared. Julia told me not to ask questions. I saw Elaine sign Mr. Hanley's name on a deposit once. I thought maybe he said it was okay." Her breath hitched. Then I found a probate note in Grandma Markham's papers with a different signature for Aunt Lila's inheritance. The dates don't match. They moved things into a storage unit and labeled the boxes choir robes and nativity props. I think the Easter money fills the gaps when they need it. She pressed her phone into my palm. Screen after screen of photos scrolled. April 1st deposit slip shows $2,460. Ledger lists $1,760. Envelope code E14. May 12th, $1,940 versus $1,240. Check images blurred like ghosts. Why tell me? I asked. Because you write things down, she said. And because Daniel won't believe me. I heard his footsteps outside the door as if conjured by his name. He knocked once, lightly. Mara, you in there? I opened the door. His face was gentle and tired. Babe, he said, Mom's upset. She thinks you're making a big deal. Can we just drop it for today? My chest burned like I'd inhaled bleach. I looked at Tessa, who stared at the floor, and at Ruth, who stood in the hall like a sentry. I am trained to de-escalate, to buy time, to keep airways open until help arrives. This felt like choosing between oxygen and silence. I said yes to Daniel, and Tessa's mouth tightened like a stitched wound. I told myself I had agreed to pause, not to forget. After the last folding chair clapped shut and the last crock-pot was claimed, I ducked into the office with the excuse of returning lost and found scarves. The safe was open, the deposit bags were gone. On the desk sat the blue key fob and a spiral notebook with a sticky note, storage inventory, returned to Elaine. I shouldn't have, but I did. I flipped the notebook open. Dates ran down the left in tidy blocks. Beside April 1st, someone had written, boxes 4, robes, display cross, batteries, cleaner. Beside April 1st in the bank log, which I had photographed, the deposit time read 3:42 p.m., but the text Tessa had snapped of Elaine and Julia passing the counter showed a clock reading 2:10 p.m. Not proof, but friction. In the back pocket, a folded invoice tumbled out. Riverbend Storage, Unit 512A. Autopay set to the church debit card. Contact E. Markham. Autopay date. The same day Aunt Lila's probate hearing had been delayed last fall. I wrote the unit number on my palm and tucked the notebook back exactly as I found it. In the hall, Aunt Ruth was zipping her coat. Walk me to my car, she asked, tone casual, eyes sharp. In the parking lot, wind skated across the asphalt and lifted the edges of the raffle posters taped to the door. If you go looking, Ruth said, do it when you're not angry. You'll see cleaner. I'm not angry, I said. Then you're not paying attention, she said, and she smiled without joy. At home, Daniel fell asleep on the couch to the sound of baseball highlights. I sat at the kitchen table and lined up photos. April 1st, May 12th, February 18th. Timestamps. Ledger lines. Amounts that didn't match any weather except a storm. I searched Riverbend Storage and saw it closed at 6 on Sundays. It was 5:10. If I wanted truth before second thoughts, I had 50 minutes to meet it. I grabbed my keys. Cameras mean someone is already collecting their own version of events, and I have learned in clinics and kitchens that whoever controls the timeline controls the story people believe. Then Tessa texted, if you go, don't go alone. There's a camera. I waited. Patience is a muscle. Mine twitched. I texted back, tomorrow. We'll go together. On Monday morning, I took an early lunch break and walked to First Riverbank with Tessa. The lobby smelled like carpet cleaner and new envelopes. A teller named Corinne greeted us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I asked to speak to a manager about donation deposit procedures for the church. While we waited, Tessa pretended to study a rack of brochures. Her hands were trembling. Manager Patel emerged, gray suit, calm voice, eyes that measured, not judged. I explained we were volunteers verifying records after our treasurer fell ill. I kept it simple, clean. Could we confirm dates on deposit slips against ledger copies? We could see our own records, he said, but anything involving signatures or account holder details would require the authorized parties. Tessa slid a photocopy across the desk, a deposit slip dated April 1st for $2,460 with Mr. Hanley's signature. Patel looked at it closely. This is a signature stamp, he said gently. See the ink pooling at the serif? My stomach dropped a little. Is that allowed? Tessa asked. If the account holder authorizes it and logs it properly, Patel said. But it should be used consistently, and the amounts should match. If something seems off, the board can request a reconciliation. Reconciliation, a clean word for a messy thing. On the way out, we nearly collided with Mrs. Ng, who volunteers on Mondays. She leaned close as if gossip were a secret recipe. Elaine said Mr. Hanley wanted us to do temporary loans from the big holiday fund for the roof, she whispered. Only for a week or two, to smooth cash flow. I told her I'm not comfortable, but she said, it's fine, we're all family here. Family, again. Outside, the wind cut through my jacket. Tessa hugged herself. There's more, she said. At the storage place. I nodded. After school, I said. We both knew waiting made the ground feel less steady. The nurse in me wanted monitors. The aunt in me wanted locks. Then Daniel called, voice tight. Mom says you're snooping. Come home now. I went home because marriages fail not only from betrayals but from neglect, and I didn't want to add fuel to Elaine's narrative of me as disloyal. Daniel paced, jaw tight. Mom said you were interrogating her, he began. I asked to see a ledger, I said. I'm worried things aren't lining up. You're making a storm out of drizzle, he said, rubbing his forehead. If there's nothing to hide, truth will calm us, I said. He exhaled, shoulders low. Just don't corner her, he said. She hates being embarrassed. After school, Tessa slipped into my car like a shadow. We drove to Riverbend Storage, corrugated doors blinking open and shut, a sensor beeping in the cold hall. Unit 512 as locked clicked open with the blue fob. Inside, bankers' boxes stacked, tidy handwriting, choir robes, nativity, lamps, archives. One box felt too heavy to be fabric. I opened it. Inside were folders labeled reimbursements, each with a sticky note. Gas, ink, folding tables, emergency loan, roof hold. Some had copies of receipts. Others had handwritten IOUs initialed EM. Tucked under the last folder lay a photocopy of a probate note, Aunt Lila's estate, promising a distribution upon trustee discretion. Signature scrawled like a left-handed cousin of the real one. I had seen Aunt Lila's neat loops on birthday cards. These were not them. Tessa swallowed. I found that in Grandma's desk after the funeral, she said. A week later, the desk was gone and Elaine said she gave it to Goodwill. Under another flap, a small cash box rattled with rolled coins and singles. On a yellow pad, envelope codes crossed out. E14, E21, E36. The list ended today. This wasn't drizzle, it was a map. We need copies, I said, my voice low. Tessa took photos with shaking hands while I scanned with a phone app, one used for care plans, each page flattening into legible lines. We locked everything exactly as we found it. On the way out, a camera blinked red and followed our movement like a patient's eyes. Tessa gripped my sleeve. If Elaine learns I told you, she'll say I made it up, she whispered. She'll tell Julia I'm ungrateful. She'll cut off my college help. I thought of my oath to do no harm and how silence can wound. Then a storage attendant stepped out and said, Ma'am, could you wait a moment? The attendant's name tag read Kyle. He glanced at the camera feed, then at us. Just checking the unit log, he said, jotting something on a clipboard. I kept my voice even. Everything okay? He nodded, distracted. Yeah, just a lot of activity today. It's Easter cleanup week, I said, and he laughed, small and harmless. We walked out under the humming lights, and I felt every shadow like a question. In the car, Tessa breathed out a long note she'd been holding. Sorry, she said. He knows Elaine. Then we move carefully, I said. We document. We don't accuse without proof. I have learned the hard way that people forgive deceit faster than embarrassment. At home, I set up a plan. Copies of ledgers, screenshots of the bank slips, audio notes recording dates and a chain of custody, the phone scanner app saving PDFs labeled with timestamps. I texted Ruth that we would need a witness if this escalated. She replied with a thumbs up and, moments later, a photo of her legal pad. April totals question, signature stamp query, reimbursements policy. That night, Daniel watched the game and I watched numbers. I practiced lines in my head. We need transparency. We need reconciliation. We need to protect Tessa. Elaine texted the family thread a photo of smiling volunteers under the banner Stronger Together. I saved the photo. Sometimes the caption is the story. The next morning, I called lawyer Singh, who once helped a patient's family with a guardianship and had told me to call if I ever had questions about documents. She listened without interrupting. Get the originals if you can, she said. Compare signatures. Check probate filings. Do not confront alone. I scheduled a meeting for Friday morning, early, before the craft fair crowds. I invited Daniel. He said he'd try to come. I invited Ruth. She said she would bring her pad. I invited Tessa, and her text bubbled, disappeared, bubbled again. I'll come, she wrote. I'm scared. Me too. I typed and sent a heart I didn't feel. Then Elaine called and said, family dinner Thursday, everyone. Dress nice. Elaine's dining room smells like polish and roasted rosemary. The table gleams under the chandelier. Place cards, anchor napkins folded like lilies. I wore a dress I saved for graduations and courtrooms. Tessa arrived with Julia, eyes down, cardigan sleeves pulled over her hands. Daniel kissed my cheek, relief and worry braided in his expression. Elaine floated in on a cloud of compliments. Mara, that color is almost regal, she said. Just remember, we're casual folk. Ruth sat at the far end, her legal pad tucked under a tote, her glasses low on her nose. Elaine carved the roast and carved the conversation too. We are so blessed, she said. Even with Mr. Hanley sick, everyone pulled together. Some people might be tempted to make trouble, but we know a family that sticks together can handle anything. She looked at me when she said trouble. Daniel's hand found my knee under the table and pressed once, a plea for peace or for quiet. I couldn't tell. Mom, he said gently, let's enjoy dinner. Elaine smiled. Of course. By the way, Mara, I heard you called a lawyer about church business. I can't imagine why. The room tilted a degree. Ruth cleared her throat. We all care about transparency, she said. No one is accusing anyone. Elaine laughed, light as meringue. Accusations are ugly words, she said. Ugly women use them. Julia flinched. Tessa set down her fork with a clatter that sounded like courage breaking. I looked at Daniel. He looked at his plate. I am protecting the church, Elaine said. And we all know how rumors start. She reached for my hand, as if in benediction, and squeezed hard enough to hurt. I wanted to stand up and list dates, amounts, codes. Instead, I took a breath. Ruth caught my eye and shook her head once, small and firm. We ate custard, and the sweetness scraped my throat. The conversation wandered to travel plans and choir solos, but every laugh felt staged, every pause measured. I noticed the new camera tucked high in the corner near the china cabinet, the little red light like a recording heartbeat. Elaine collects eyes the way some people collect plates. She mounts them where you forget to look. Then Elaine raised a glass and said, to family who know when to stay quiet. Friday morning came cold and pale. I woke before the alarm and watched the gray seep into our bedroom like water under a door. Daniel slept on his side, hand open, the same hand that steadied me when my mother died and wavered last night under his mother's gaze. I kissed his knuckles. Come, I whispered. He nodded without opening his eyes. At First Riverbank, Patel had set aside a small conference room with a screen and a patient pot of coffee. Ruth arrived first, her tote bristling with highlighters. Tessa slipped in next, shoulders squared. She looked like every teenager trying to be brave. Lawyer Singh entered last, crisp and calm, her hair neat, her questions neater. Daniel stood by the door, jaw tight, arms crossed. But he was there. We are here to reconcile documents, Singh said, tone even. We aren't accusing anyone today. We're verifying. Patel connected a laptop. I can display images you've brought and compare them to our records, he said. On the screen, I pulled up the side-by-side scans, ledger totals, deposit slips, envelope codes. Singh asked permission to record the meeting for notes. Patel agreed. Let's start with April 1st, she said. $2 for $60 on the deposit slip, $1,760 on the ledger copy. Ruth read the timestamps like rosary beads. Photo 1, 2:10 p.m. at counter. Deposit recorded, 3:42 p.m. Tessa's photo of the storage list appeared next. Boxes 4, robes, display cross, batteries, cleaner. Singh tilted her head. And this probate note, she said, pulling up the image. Where did this come from? Grandma's desk, Tessa said, voice small but steady. Before it disappeared, Patel pointed at the scrawl. That looks inconsistent with the signature we have on file for Lila, he said carefully. Daniel shifted. His mouth opened. He closed it again. The door latch clicked. Elaine walked in, smile polished to a blade. What are we verifying? She asked. She set a thermos down like a trophy. Then she saw the probate note on the screen, and her smile thinned. Singh's voice stayed calm enough to lean on. Mrs. Markham, we're reconciling church donation records with deposit records and reviewing a probate document. Elaine's gaze flicked to Daniel, then to Tessa, then to me, weighing where the easiest buckle might be. This is inappropriate, she said brightly. Bank matters are private. Patel folded his hands. We are showing only what these volunteers brought and comparing to dates and times, he said. On the screen, we advanced through months. December, Christmas Eve total $5,320. Ledger $4,420. February, Youth Retreat, Drive $1,980. Ledger $1,280. The differences were not rounding errors. They were patterns. Temporary loans? Ruth asked softly. Elaine's smile held. Sometimes, she said. When the roof fund stalled, Mr. Hanley told me to smooth things. We have a benefactor. Name? Singh asked. Elaine hesitated. Anonymous, she said, too quickly. Singh nodded as if listening to music only she could hear. Mrs. Markham, did you use a signature stamp for Mr. Hanley? Sometimes, Elaine said. With his permission. Can you provide that permission in writing? Silence settled like dust. Patel pulled up the bank signature card. The scrawl on the probate note now looked like a mask sliding. The probate note assigned inheritance at trustee discretion, Singh said. That's not how Aunt Lila's will reads on file. She placed a certified copy on the table. The signature loops were steady and familiar. This, she tapped the screen, is inconsistent. Elaine's eyes sharpened. You think I took a few dollars to fix a leak? You think I would harm my family? Her voice trembled, not with shame, but with fury. I carried this church through a pandemic while others stayed home complaining. Daniel swallowed. Mom, he said, if this is a mistake, we can correct it. I don't make mistakes, she snapped. People take advantage. She looked at Tessa. Some people don't know how good they have it. Tessa bent inward like a leaf hit by rain. I reached for her hand under the table. Singh's tone cooled a degree. We'll need to involve the board, she said. Then Elaine said, if you do, I'll make sure Tessa regrets this. Things move slowly until they don't. By noon, Patel had placed a hold on unusual transactions pending board review. By evening, Elaine had called 6 relatives and posted a vague Facebook status about betrayal under my own roof. Ruth texted me screenshots with an eye roll emoji. Daniel paced the living room, phone buzzing every few minutes. This is a mess, he said. I know, I said. I also knew mess wasn't the enemy. Concealment was. The church board scheduled an emergency meeting for Monday. Singh agreed to attend. The bank's fraud team left a voicemail asking for a written timeline. Singh drafted one with me at the kitchen table between reheated leftovers and cold tea. Our pastor called, voice weary, to say the board wanted an independent review, and could I please avoid social media because optics matter. My manager pulled me aside, asked if I needed time off, but I said routine keeps me steady, and routine was the only steady thing I had. I reported what Tessa had entrusted to me to a mandated reporter hotline, framing it as financial irregularities with possible coercion. The operator took my statement with care. At work, I charted vitals while my phone lit up like a fish tank. A volunteer emailed that the craft fair was postponed. Another said we'd ruined Easter for the elderly. I kept my head down and my notes clean. Daniel slept on the couch one night, and then came to bed but faced the wall. I missed his warmth like I miss a tooth my tongue keeps finding. Tessa's school counselor called to say Tessa had asked about part-time work, just in case. I felt rage like heat behind my eyes and went outside to breathe in the cold. Julia sent a single text. She didn't mean that. Meaning Elaine's threat. Meaning all of it. Ruth stopped by with soup and a hard truth. You don't owe anyone your silence, she said. Even your husband. I cried into a dish towel and then stood up straighter. We organized the files for Monday in labeled folders. I practiced breathing like I teach anxious patients. Count in 4, hold 4, out 6. All weekend, I waited for something to break louder. On Sunday night, a brick hit our mailbox. Then Daniel whispered, Mom says she'll sue you unless you recant everything. The board meeting was long and careful. Patel and Singh spoke in neutral verbs. Ruth kept notes in quadrants. Daniel sat between Julia and me, a bridge and a border. The board voted to freeze discretionary withdrawals and to hire an outside auditor. They relieved Elaine of deposit duties pending review. Her face didn't change, but her jaw ticked like a metronome. Afterward, I suggested to Tessa and Julia that we make a safety plan. Copies of important documents in a folder at my place, a code word for "pick me up now," and an email to a free legal clinic in case college funds became collateral. Tessa's relief made me feel both useful and furious. Daniel and I saw a counselor who said grief sometimes wears the mask of loyalty, and we need new boundaries that protect truth over comfort. At home, I wrote down conditions for any support we'd give Elaine and Julia. Transparency with receipts, no more signature stamps, no temporary loans, church board oversight on all reimbursements. I emailed the list to the board and to Elaine so no one could claim confusion. Ruth brought over blank calendars and helped us block out court dates, audit windows, and graduation milestones so the mess wouldn't swallow the good. I started to sleep again in stretches longer than a hymn. On Tuesday, Tessa texted me a photo of a scholarship letter. She had won a local award. I printed it and put it on our fridge like a talisman. Daniel began to uncross his arms slowly, like thawing ice. We talked with honesty that hurt, and then settled into something sturdier than truce. Elaine didn't apologize. She did, however, send a message saying she would step back for optics, and I took the small win. I kept the folder labeled evidence in a drawer and the folder labeled hope on the fridge. We were not whole, but we were not pretending either. The counselor asked Daniel to practice saying, "Mom, I hear you, but no," 3 times in a row while maintaining eye contact. It sounded silly until it wasn't. I wrote a script for myself too. I will help when there is documentation. I will not help in secrecy. Practice doesn't make perfect, she said. Practice makes possible. Then a certified letter arrived addressed to me, Markham v. Markham et.al. I won't share the legal filings here. That belongs to courts and to people paid to argue about commas. I will share what I learned. Money is not evil, but secrecy often is. If your holiday table demands silence as payment for belonging, leave the bill unpaid. I used to think love meant enduring, forgiving, smoothing. I still believe in forgiveness. I just no longer confuse it with enabling. When we sort evidence on our kitchen table now, the scholarships and choir schedules sit beside the ledger copies. We keep both visible because the good doesn't cancel the harm. It coexists and demands better light. Tessa tucked the scholarship letter into a frame and carried it around the house, holding it up to different windows. She laughed when the gold seal caught the late sun and made a bright oval on the ceiling. "Proof," she said, "that someone saw me." I started keeping a small notebook in my bag that says facts on the cover, a gift from Ruth. In it, I write down what dates belong to which envelopes, but also what made Daniel laugh that day and what I cooked by accident that turned out right. Lawyer Singh told me to define our thresholds in writing, and we did. No late-night loans, no unlogged reimbursements, no family threats. Boundaries are boring until they save a life. The craft fair finally happened with clear jars, counted in pairs, and walked to the bank by 2 people at a time. Corinne smiled for real when we arrived. The church posted an update about our new procedures, not dramatic, just firm. Some people apologized. Some didn't. We keep going. If you're reading this with a knot in your stomach because a teen trusted you with a truth, know this. Write it down. Make a plan. Gather a witness. And remember, you are not the only adult in the room. One hopeful image. Tessa at the river last weekend. Wind lifting her hair, the scholarship letter folded in her pocket, her shoulders finally not braced. One practical takeaway. Dates, amounts, names, who held the keys, who signed, who watched. You are not disloyal for wanting the truth under bright lights. You are brave.